Hello, my name is Ed Engelking. This video is part 4 in a series covering the surgery and subsequent recovery of my acoustic neuroma. So today's discussion is discussing facial weakness, and to be quite honest, this was the biggest fear that I had going into surgery, was that I would have facial weakness or potentially paralysis, and that really bothered me a great deal. So there's quite a few videos on the internet that shows what this looks like. Some of them are okay, you can tell that people have facial weakness, and others are quite extreme. And to be quite frank, it really bothered me, especially seeing some of the more extreme videos, just how bad it could be. Really, facial weakness is the one thing out of everything as it goes with the surgery that people can really see. They can't really see the deafness that could potentially come from severing a nerve, or balance issues. I mean, they can kind of see you stumbling, but it's still not something to correlate with the surgery itself. But facial weakness or paralysis is something that is very real and very visible, to a point to where even when I started to encounter problems, my wife was very visibly shaken, I think is fair to say, is something that she could very easily see, and is something that she really concentrated on a great deal as a direct result. So, this is something that I really didn't want to have happen. I didn't want someone to feel sorry for me purely for issues with my face, a droopy face or drooping eyes or anything along those lines. So when it came to it, when the doctor gave me an option, what was the most important thing to me that wasn't to be affected during surgery, I told them, please, do everything in your power to preserve the facial nerves so that I didn't have to experience these problems. And when it came down to it, the doctor did a phenomenal job. I really can't say just how pleased I am overall with just the surgery, but what he was able to do to make sure that my wishes were met. So initially, coming out of the surgery, I felt some numbness around my eyes and mouth, and as I progressed, I really continued to feel that way, and really to the point today, which is, I'm 5 weeks out from the surgery, I can still feel some weakness, but it's not what it was at all. Initially I felt some numbness around my eyes and mouth, to a point to where, I was constantly, doing this or, feeling around, but it's not so much that any longer. I just don't have the control of my eye and mouth that I once had, prior to the surgery. And that's really the biggest change that I've noticed. But the doctor said after the surgery that the weakness may subside over a period of time, and that it's common coming off of steroids to experience an increase in facial weakness, and then for those issues to eventually subside. And I'm happy to say that I can feel my face much better today than what I've been able to in the past couple of weeks. I noticed last week that when I blink, that my eyes are blinking in tandem now. It's not just the right side blinking really fast and the left side staying open. I've also noticed that when I smile, that it's a much better and more symmetric smile than what it once was, where this side was normal and then this side just kind of stayed flat. And even when I talk, I was noticing that this side moved a lot more and this side stayed flat. And that's just not as true anymore. Is it perfect? No. Especially when I get tired, it gets pretty obvious that the facial weakness is still there, but it's not what it once was. So I figured I would take a few minutes and talk about the experience in itself. And there's a couple different areas I wanted to talk about. One being the eye, two being the face and mouth area, and my tongue and taste. So around 2 weeks in, after the surgery, I noticed that, as I mentioned before, that my eye, my left eye specifically, wasn't keeping up with my right eye. And I would blink my right eye, but my left eye just wasn't closing all the way. If I put effort into it, I could close both eyes and it would be fine. But when I was just out and about and doing things, I really started to notice that my left eye became dry and irritated all the time. I just had redness in my eye, just for a pure lack of movement from my eyelid, just keeping my eye moist. The left eye was just staying open all the time, and it was really starting to cause some pain and discomfort. And eventually, especially when I started getting tired, what I noticed is that I would do this. I would just keep my hand over my eye just so that it wouldn't hurt so much, and it kept the air and everything out. But I would move around, and that would allow it to get a little more moisture on the eyeball itself. Eventually, I emailed the doctor and told him what was going on. He prescribed some eye drops for me. I'd also gotten some over-the-counter eye drops as well, and those worked really well. They're not needed nearly as much today as what I had needed them in the past. But eventually, as I stated, everything got better. When I blink now, everything's kind of in tandem. At night is when I notice it the most still. But again, I think that's due to just being tired or fatigue. And that's pretty much it. I hope that I will continue to see improvement. But if this is it, this isn't such a terrible place to be when it comes to the eye. So the face is the next point I wanted to talk about. And really, it's moving quite well. Especially if you watch the first couple of videos, you can really see the eye and the face just not moving quite as well. You can even see, some of the wrinkles under the eye, which is normal, as compared to this eye. Whereas in the first videos, they just really, this just kind of looked like it was, stretched out. And, I wasn't doing that. It was just my face being weak. The corner of my mouth also was showing, signs as well. But it's much better. My cheeks go up and they kind of mirror one another now. And, just doing normal smiles, you could still see it. It's still there, but it's not what it was. It's just a significant improvement, and I'm very pleased about it. One thing I definitely did notice was that when it came to opening my mouth, in addition just to the smile and everything itself, I couldn't open my mouth wide anymore. And so I was having to take smaller bites of food, and that was just incredibly frustrating. And the other part of it is that I was biting the inside of my mouth a lot on the left side, and just because the mouth wasn't moving. So as I'm chewing, the expectation is that the mouth is moving along with you, and it really wasn't. So every day, at least once a day for 2 weeks, I was biting the inside of my mouth, and it just hurt so bad. Just got used to moving all of the food to the right side of my mouth and chewing that way. But even still, I would slip every once in a while and just chomp down on the inner part of my lip, or inside somewhere, or on the tongue, and that just got really old after a while. Thankfully, it's not so bad anymore, and I'm really, really happy about that. The last thing that it was more funny than anything to me was I lost the ability to spit. You don't even really think about these kinds of things, spitting. So, I really noticed it when I was in the shower, because I take the shower head and, rinse my mouth out and then spit the water out, and noticed, I'm not really able to do that anymore. Things like brushing your teeth. You're brushing your teeth and you try to spit out the stuff that's in your mouth, and it just wasn't coming out correctly. Everything just kind of came out this side instead of going straight through. And even when I try to do simple things like stick my tongue out, like that, Instead, I was going over to this side, more like that. That's, I think, why I laughed at it so much. It was so funny just to see something that was incredibly normal, just spitting or just sticking a tongue out, just your body not knowing how to do it anymore. It was just odd. So, going, as a continuation onto the tongue has been probably the most interesting thing that I've been dealing with in regards to the weakness and paralysis, just because it was so unexpected. The doctor and I really didn't talk much about the tongue. We talked about facial weakness and paralysis, but the tongue is just kind of tied into that as well. The brain is a weird thing, and your sense of taste and everything is kind of tied into just lots of different things going on in your noggin. And so the doctor explained that they just don't know a whole heck of a lot about certain elements, and that's just one of them. Why does your sense of taste change when surgery occurs, or specifically with the brain, or even with something like a stroke? It can occur, and they just honestly don't know. So I figured I'd take a few minutes and outline, what that was like for me, just because it was so unexpected and no one really talked with me about it. So initially, I was told that the sense of taste would come back, or should come back, after a few weeks. And to be honest, some of it did. It's not like it's been just completely gone this entire time. It's just been a gradual progression of taste sensations over a period of time. Is it back to where it should be? Absolutely not. There's things that I can and cannot taste, which I'll go over in a little bit. So one of the things that really stands out, at least initially, everything that I ate tasted waxy. It was just awful. I had no sense of taste whatsoever. But as that receded, it was eventually replaced with everything being salty. Everything. It doesn't matter what I eat or drink. Everything is salty. Even water is salty. That's frustrating. Half of my tongue is still, I guess for the lack of a better term, numb. It's not really numb, but it numb to taste, I guess, is the better way to explain it. So the left side, of course, makes perfect sense. Really, I can't taste or anything as it relates to the tongue on that left side. But the right side, I can taste and say and sense certain things quite well. But that's really what it comes down to is, this list that I've been working on of things that I can and cannot taste. So here are things that I cannot taste. So oils. Oils taste waxy. It's awful. There's just no flavor to it at all. It just feels like your mouth is coated with a wax. And it also takes forever for it to go away. I will drink water and just drink. And so basically I'm left with the feeling of waxy salt in my mouth. Starchy foods also cannot taste. These are things like potatoes, bread, some of my favorite things. Again, waxy, but not nearly as bad as oil. Mostly just because I think it doesn't stay in your mouth like what oil does. And fatty foods, meats, nuts, mayonnaise. I cannot in any way, shape, or form eat mayonnaise today. It makes me half nauseous to even think about it. One of the first foods I was given in the hospital was a chicken salad sandwich on a croissant. And so it was basically everything that it was all wrapped up into one. Just incredibly disgusting piece of food. I took a bite out of it and spit it out immediately. If they give you chicken salad in the hospital, just don't even ask for something else, at least for my recommendation. Things that I can taste, though. Obviously, I can taste salt. I taste a lot of salt. It gets to be a little disgusting at times. I discovered today that I can drink a beer and taste the beer almost immediately. It was just a really nice experience. But the way I described it to someone was, imagine, you have a drink of something and it tastes really, really great, and then you follow it up immediately with salt water. And that's what beer tastes like to me right now. Especially things that are salty in itself, it just becomes an overabundant amount of salt. someone recommended to me to try just plain popcorn and see what that tastes like, which was a great idea. I'm actually going to try that. So sugars and sweets, I can taste that no problem. Things like sugar, chocolate, things of that nature, they taste good. I could taste them, but it just isn't as appealing as what it once was. I don't know if it's because it isn't as strong as it is, or it's because I still have that, lack of taste on part of my tongue or whatever, but it just isn't nearly as appealing as what it ever has been for me in the past. Spices, I can taste. I love it. It's just remarkable. Spices are one of the very first things that I tasted, and it was soup actually, and it just made me happy, put a smile on my face. I can taste things that are smoky. I love smoked foods, or smoked spices or things of that nature, so I was really, really pleased about that. Interestingly enough, if you look at the things that I cannot taste, it really consists of fats, which doesn't surprise me a great deal, but oils, starchy foods, fatty foods, things of that nature. But I can taste dairy, which dairy contains fat, and it's generally on certain things can be considered fairly fatty. But things like milk, cheese, yogurt, I can taste without problem. I don't know what it is specifically about dairy that makes me able to taste it, but it tastes fine, no problems. And then things like veggies, corn, carrots, lettuce. Corn surprised me because it's considered a starchy vegetable, but I think maybe the sweetness of corn offsets that. I don't know, but I can definitely taste it. And that pretty much covers it. When it comes down to it, it's the facial weakness thing was the thing I was scared most about. It really had me the most concerned. The fact that I don't have it, I think, comes from the fact that we are able to have this surgery laparoscopically now, and it's not like this surgery has not been around for 30 some odd years. It's well practiced, and they're getting better at it all the time. And I think the approach that they take these days, where they don't remove 100% of the tumor, in order to preserve as much of the bodily functions as possible, is a really great approach. I just happened to get lucky that they removed what they removed, and the rest of it just died. To where I don't have any more of the tumor, is great. But the approach used to be to go in and just remove all of it, destroy everything, destroy all of the nerves, and it just isn't the best approach. It's about being able to live your life after the fact, and being able to live as normal of a life as you possibly can. And having facial weakness or paralysis, in my mind, does not allow a person to live a good, solid life after the fact. So the fact that they can do this now and give someone a significantly better chance of not having to deal with these problems is just phenomenal in my book. Hopefully, if someone is watching this and has to make a choice in the future, find a surgeon that A, does everything laparoscopically, B, leaves part of the tumor behind, and C, understands that there's other methods besides removing 100% of the tumor. There's radiosurgery that you can take a look at after the fact, and go in and try to kill whatever remains. That was definitely the option that I was going for. And maybe you get lucky, maybe not. In my case, where the tumor just died off and there was nothing left, or you go in and have the radiosurgery and kill off the remaining little portion that's left. But definitely, take into consideration how the after effects of the surgery are going to affect your life, and it's very, very important. Is it easy? Everything that I've been dealing with? Absolutely not. But ultimately, I can deal with being deaf in one ear. I can deal with the balance issues. Eventually, those will most likely subside. But facial paralysis and the destruction of those nerves is permanent, and it's very difficult to recover from. So that's all I got to say for today. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave a comment or whatnot below. Or if you're watching this on Facebook, feel free to comment there as well. Take care and talk to you next time.